Hello, everyone. It's really nice to see you all. My name is Jianko, and I think this is my 8th year to attend Max TESOL, but this is my first time to cover plenary. So I'm very thrilled, even though we have to see each other via video. I hope we can have very, how can I say that, helpful one session each other. So let's get started. So today I'm going to talk about differentiated instruction with practical ideas. It sounds very fancy and hard, to be honest. I totally understand you. But the thing is, if I look into schools in Central South America, Mexico, Korea, especially many English teachers, they're applying these instruction methodologies without knowing what it is, right? So today, we're going to look into what differentiated instructions are, but at the same time, what are the key elements and also key characteristics? I was doing it, but from now on, I have this set of ideas and then like theory guide for me to do my differentiated instruction in the classroom. I'm pretty sure most of you guys have that kind of like looking back kind of session through this 1 hour. So to be able to do that, I'm going to start with what differentiated instruction is. And then we're going to look into elements of differentiation. After that, we're going to have a chance to look at strategies and then examples of implementing differentiated instruction. I hope you're ready. So let's get going. Well, if you teach English, I think this is your reality. Not all the students are the same, right? They all have different background. For example, some of your students are from top-notch, like private kindergarten from the big city. So they have quite a background knowledges about phonics, sentence, blah, blah, blah. But some of your students have no idea what alphabets are, right? And then also they struggle a lot to pronounce it because it's a little different from Espanol, right? And also their learning style is totally different, personal experience, interest. You have many scientists in your classroom, but at the same time, musician and artist, right? And then their motivations are totally different. I'm pretty sure many of you guys have a high motivation when it comes to learning a language, right? That's how we became English teachers. But the thing is, not all our students have that motivation. So as a teacher, it's really hard. So in reality, even though our students have this different background and readiness in interest, we try to squeeze them into one fit all kind of classroom and also test too, right? Well, when I remember my like English class when I was in elementary school, wow, that was boring, right? So alphabet, writing down the alphabet 1,000 times, even though you're into like sing a song activities, dance activities, what you need to do is just to sit back and then write down alphabet 1,000 times, right? With that education, kind of we failed many of our students, right? Because if you look at, for example, your sisters and brothers, I'm more like reading to learn kind of like personality and the learning style. But my sister, she has to move her body around. So everybody has the different learning style, and then on top of that, readiness, right? So with this skills, everybody into one system kind of failed the system, right? So now all the scholars and also teachers and then parents, they're thinking about this differentiated instruction. Then let's look at what it is. So This is the process, differentiated instruction. This is not the magic boom kind of word. So include planning, and then also your preparation, and also delivery of instruction. But when you do this planning, preparation, delivery of instruction, you need to think about your students' needs. And then their diversities when it comes to their learning style, readiness within one classroom. So through this differentiated instruction, you can consider what you teach and also who you teach, where you teach, and how you teach. This is kind of the like definition of what differentiated instruction is, right? And let's get going. And also within differentiated instruction, students are going to have different options to learn the information. Interesting, right? As I mentioned before, some of your students are really into playing with this computer. So when they Google the information, and then if they search by themselves with their computer, they can remember further, right? And some of your students need to read the reading text. Some of your students might like to listen to music or audio files, right? So those are all the different learning styles. So in one class, basic level, you need to differentiate the way to deliver that information to your students. That's basically what differentiated instruction is. I hope this answers your questions and curiosities about differentiated instruction. And when I talk about differentiated, whenever I talk about differentiated instruction, I see your like the frustration like on your face, right? Okay, what do I need to plan more, right? What do I need to do more to prepare one class, right? So sometimes we overwhelm to think about differentiation. That means, do I need to have like 10 more instructional strategies? That's not true, actually. So differentiated instruction seems like it, but in reality, differentiation means you need to change your way of thinking, and also teaching and learning. So we often have this one scare set of mind that, oh, teaching should be you stand up and then giving out lots of information, and then your students, like a sponge, they absorb all the information, right? Which is not true. So you need to change that your set mind when it comes to teaching and learning. So I'm going to give you more specific ideas how to do it. So let's get going. So one thing that you need to remember when it comes to differentiated instruction, don't worry about it too much. You are going to just focus on the essentials. One thing, no one can learn everything in every textbook, right? Well, I'm from the publisher, so I always talk to my teachers. I cannot say books are no goods, right? They're pretty amazing books. But sometimes we tend to focus too much on filling in the gap in the book and then just remember the information in the book. But that's not how you learn the knowledge or language or information. So to keep this mind so no one can learn everything in every books, then you're going to release a bit of that frustration when it comes to differentiated instruction. So we're going to go into elements of differentiation. So there are several things. Well, when we think about low level of students and upper level of students all together, oh, with upper level of students, I can write a beautiful essay, nice project, lower level of students, you go there, sit there, and then draw a butterfly with your colored pencil, even though you're fifth graders. No, you cannot do that. Even though they have different level of readiness and then totally different like learning style, you need to think about meaningful work for each like level. That's really important. And also you can differentiate it a bit. I'm going to explain further about that part. And also when you work together, teacher is not the like commander in the classroom. You need to work together because sometimes each student have different pace when it comes to understand the information or knowledges that you want them to observe. In that case, you respect their pace. Don't get too frustrated because you always have a late boomer or like always have some students takes more time or less time to understand something. So you need to respect that and then work together with that aspect. And when it comes to assessment, we tend to have one form of assessment. Sometimes, yes, they need to be familiar with those test format because nowadays kids, they need to have those standardized tests whenever they go or wherever they go. But the thing is, with this differentiated instruction, you always look close your students' progress, and then you need to have the flexibility to modify or shape the next lesson based on your student, your like ongoing assessment. I think that's the key. And as I mentioned several times, students are not the same. So different students, different style, it's fine. So even though you set a whole class goal, sometimes that goal, not all of your students reach that goal. So within those subgroups, you can set a different goal. So once they reach this goal, then you know that they accomplished certain things. So don't worry about it too much when you think about this differentiated instruction, because I see lots of teachers get frustrated if they get used to have just one set goal and then, oh my God, this is to die for kind of goal, right? And then next, it's really important to have that collaborating environment when it comes to differentiated instruction, because differentiated instruction means you need to group your students based on their learning style or readiness or their levels, depends on what you want them to be in that group. In that way, as a teacher, you're going to be the facilitator, like most of you are doing it. In that way, you need to be able to like collaborate as a teacher. If you're focusing on with this group, the other group, they need to monitor their progress. And then also they need to set the goals. They need to be able to plan, work together, and then report to you. I think the system, collaborating system is very important. And it's the same as my previous comment. As a teacher, you need to think about the whole group goal, what you want them to gain through this lesson or this unit. But at the same time, you need to think about individual norms. I really like this expression, best soccer team. You always have someone who's really good at kicking a ball, right? And then like the catching, not the catching, like goalkeeper, you need to have a really nice goalkeeper, and then also who the player who can pass the ball, the extra. So classroom is the same. If you want them to be just a goalkeeper, you're not going anywhere. So you need to kind of respect each student's norm and also their standard and also their progress and then their goal. I think these are the elements that you need to keep that in mind when you think of this differentiated instruction. Then let's look at the elements when you build your curriculum. As you all know, we need to think about the contents, right? And then process and product when we build our curriculum. But in differentiated instruction, you can modify this. Contents, for example, if you have certain contents, but you can dissect a contents a bit, depends on your students' like needs and then their learning style. And also sometimes you want to have extra video for a certain group, and then sometimes you want to have extra poem for them to read, and then extra. So those contents can be varied, depends on your students. And then process too. You can design some activities that needs to fulfill your students' learning goals, right? But at the same time, you can think about the how to formulate those activities, and then the process or grouping that depends on your students' needs, and then your design of this differentiated instruction classroom. And then product too. Sometimes we want to have certain product out of this lesson. For example, you want them to have this nice, the book report, right? You want them to have one format, and then you want them to have this letter of this number of letters, these sentences, and an extra. Yes, that would be very beautiful for teacher conference night, right? Teacher parents conference night. But at the same time, some of your students might think that's too easy to finish in just 1 hour. And some of your students might think there's no way that they could finish that in a week, right? So you can differentiate those elements based on your students' needs and the learning style and readiness. Okay, let's get going. And also, when you think about this differentiated instruction curriculum, then I think I covered this a lot throughout this first part of this workshop. Readiness, right? Where your students are now. Do they already have this skill? Do they already understand these meanings or sentence format? And then you need to understand those students' readiness to go further. And then interest too. Well, I always remember for example, if I want them to learn about dinosaurs, you're going to have like half of your students are very like excited to have discuss about dinosaurs, and then you're gonna lose half of your students because they don't care about dinosaurs, right? So that's very common. So think about their interest and what they are doing really good, and then what they want to do more. Those are quite the key issues when you think about those differentiated instruction. And then learning profile, right? Certain people, they want to sit down quietly read. Yes, believe it or not, we still have those kind of students. And some of our students want to listen to the music, move their body around, walking around, and then mumbling to remember. So those kind of differentiated, like different learning style, you need to take into consideration. So quite interesting, right? So here, so the way to kind of use this differentiated instruction, you can think about the differentiated learning materials, right? Promoting the notion of multiple intelligence, this is a new topic, right? Before, we always like the students who sit there, be quiet, listen to you, and then have a good grade in the exam, right? But now, we respect students have a nice mobility, like intelligence, musical intelligence, and an extra. So you need to respect that elements. And also materials, organizers, you can verify that. And then when you group them, you need to think about the tiered lessons means like level 1, they barely know the alphabet. Level 2, they understand some of the phonics and then master the phonics. Those tiered lesson means tiered grouping, right? And then centers means I'm going to go further with the centers later, but each center has different activities. So one center, they just listen to the audio and then do the activities, reading, IT, project, or teacher, students, discussion, Q&A. And product, at the end of the lesson, how you want to group your students to have one product together. And then small group instruction is very important because even though you have this many groups going on, as a teacher, you need to touch the base with each group and then make sure that they grasp the ideas. And then if they're in the group with really like what they're doing good, then make sure that they're leading and then they're good. So next time, can you go on or you want to switch? So those kind of elements are really important. And learning orientation, as I mentioned, learning style, and then interest group. And then I really like these ideas because whenever you have a writing project, teachers tend to give you one writing prompt, right? But you can give them a little different sentence prompt so they can incorporate their learning style and then interest into their like product later on. I think I explain over and over again about differentiated elements and then also what you need to take into consideration when you want to build differentiated curriculum for your students, right? So to sum up, pretty simple. Teacher can differentiate it, contents for sure, process, and product based on your students' readiness, interest, and then learning style. Well, even though I talked a lot for 20 something minutes, it's pretty simple, right? Oh, content, process, product, based on your students' readiness, interest, learning profile. So we're going to now go into kind of a comparison to make you to try to give you a like vivid images about differentiated classroom. We're going to go over quickly about this like slide. Traditional classroom versus differentiated classroom. Before, if your students have like, if you have 10 students with 10 differences, oh, you're gonna freak out because I'm gonna have the most problematic class in the school, right? But now we kind of consider that element as a basis of our planning, right? So don't get too panicked. And assessment, we used to kind of focus on just one format of test, but now with this differentiated classroom, you know that it's ongoing and then diagnostic, right? And before, we only take into consideration about this like few intelligence, but now multiple form of intelligence. Our students come from different intelligence and then they have different strengths. And but curriculum guys, like when we cover our curriculums, we always think about this like the instruction, the set of instruction. But now our instruction is kind of varied, depends on our students' interest and then readiness and then learning style. Now we are aware of that. We can be flexible with this. And then before, we didn't respect our students' pace that much, but now it's flexible, depends on our students' needs and also their process. And before, we only have one whole class standard to grade, but now we have to have this two set. Whole class, yes, for sure, but at the same time, you need to take into consideration the individual learning goals. So you have to have those double system. So I hope you have a better vivid ideas about this differentiated classroom. Now we are going to go into examples and then strategies that you can use in differentiated classroom. So first, this is the lesson plan. Ooh, this is our Sunday afternoon life, right? So whenever we build up our lesson plan, very similar to what you're doing, procedures. And then you're gonna list this differentiated exercise that you know or you want to reinforce in your classroom. And then if you look at the next column over here, grouping. So you start with whole group exercise, whole class discussion, and then keep on going. And you're going to have level group, individual group, individually, and then those grouping. And then after that, oh, learning style group. When you do the jigsaw, make a step book, mime and guess, learning style group, quite interesting, right? And then after that, expert group and whole class again. So if you look at this lesson plan, oh, this is very similar to what I'm doing, right? I totally agree with you. But if you look at the grouping, you take into consideration your students' readiness, learning style, and also their level. So you can definitely look into this part, and then you can think about, oh, you can differentiate from this for now, and then contents, and then process, and then extra. So this is a little tip that I can give you. So one of the really nice way to incorporate the differentiated instruction is learning station. It's as it is. So if you look at this picture over here, station, rotation. They're going to rotate the station. So first, teacher lead instruction, collaborative activities, and station. Computer-based instruction. This is just one of the examples. So one thing that I can recommend when it comes to learning station, you have to kind of set one teacher lead instruction. So ideally, student can come to you first and then check their understanding, and then as a teacher, check where they are, and then you're gonna send them to one of the learning centers. And then they're going to go further with what they already know or what they learn, and then, or they can cover what they're going to learn. And then after they take time to several centers, and at the end, they should come back to you and then check their learning. So I think that's a really ideal way. So when you build this learning station for the first time, don't try to be too ambitious about this learning station. You can start with just a 2 station or 3 stations, depends on your students group, and then depends on their readiness to have their own activities in their own section. So once they have that capacity, or once you give them some trainings, then you can extend a bit further with this learning station. And then one funny thing about this learning station, they can be their own process monitor when it comes to. So I can recommend you to have those timers for each section, or as a whole class, you have a timer, so they know how much time that they have on each section, and then the amount of the study they have to cover. So once you train them, surprisingly, they can be quite independent when it comes to this learning center. So this is just how you can train them. It's the key. And this is one of the examples that what you can do. So some of the stations, you can make them watch the video for the visual learners. And then creating artwork for some of your artists, reading an article and then like answer the questions, completing the puzzle, and then listening to your like lecture. I think that's really key. So as I mentioned, ideally check where they are. You could have done that as a whole class or individually, and then make them rotate the learning centers. At the end, you check their progress. I think that's the way that you can incorporate these learning stations in your classroom. Okay, and the second really amazing activity is a task card. When you think about the card, yes, I think about Las Vegas. It's playing a game kind of format. And then your students too. That's think outside the box. And also, it's just a one task in one card. So when they have those focus time and they can solve just a one problem at a time, it gives them lots of accomplishment feelings. Because if you think about just a piece of paper and then like 10 tasks to do, they're gonna be overwhelmed pretty soon, right? But instead of doing that, you can just cut one by one, so they can just focus one. Once they finish that, they can move to the next card and then an extra. So this is a really nice way to motivate your students, but at the same time, as I mentioned, this is not just a piece of white paper, right? It's a little cute card. Sometimes it's laminated. So they think, oh, it's different, right? So it feels like they are playing a game or think outside the box. It's not like typical boring English class. So this is one of the activities you can definitely incorporate. And then one of the really nice aspect of it, you can differentiate the questionnaires. Some of your lower level of students, you can do lots of multiple questionnaire, true or false. But middle group, you want them to answer some questions verbally, right? So they can think, they can make a sentence out of their mouths. And then some of high level of your students, you can have open-ended questionnaire, right? So they are not even noticing. They are like doing the different level of test. So that's not gonna hurt their confidence neither. So I think it's really nice way to kind of incorporate all the levels. And at the same time, you can do in the like learning center, learning stations. And also it's really nice way to do individual work or pair work or group work. And as a class routine, you can start your class or end your class or in the middle, or it could be a really nice classroom games. And also you can make them do as their homework. And also you can definitely cover from kindergarten to young adults with this card. I think it's a really nice way to incorporate it. And one of the examples over here, this is a pretty like simple, straightforward question after they read these reading passages, right? But if you look at the second pages over here, quite intense, right? They need to think about the speaker's point of view when it comes to animal rights. Then, ooh, is there any conflicting viewpoints? They need to think and then they need to generate their ideas and they need to write down. So that's how you differentiate when you want to use this task card. I hope that gives you a better ideas about this task card. And then one of the activities that you can do with your students with the task card is a scoot exercise. I really like it because if you have a young learners like minis, kindergarten through elementary school, they cannot sit down properly after 5 minutes. So it's a really nice way that they can move their body around and then they can answer for a certain period of the time. And then for young adults too, they like to think they are doing some fun activity within a certain period of the time, and then also that is really like a game format, so they would love it. School is pretty simple. You can like number each desk, and then you can give one task card per a desk, and then either they can move their bodies around after 1, 2, 3, 4, something like that, or they can just pass their card around, and then they can answer the questions, and then at the end, as a whole class, you can check how many answers they get, and then what's the like most common answer that they get wrong, and then you can discuss a bit further. So it's a really nice way to wrap up the reading passages when you want to check their like reading comprehension questionnaire. So I understand that most of the reading books, they come with a really nice reading comprehension questionnaire. Yes, they need to be familiarized with this test format, but at the same time, they're so mechanic when it comes to just do the multiple questionnaire. So if you want them to think further about the reading passages and then the answers, then this is the really nice way to tweak a bit to do this reading comprehension questionnaire with your students. So this is pretty much it for me to cover differentiated instruction with you guys, but I have a really nice videos. It shows how one classroom in one elementary school is implementing this differentiated instruction, especially learning centers. So we're gonna just watch briefly, and then I hope you have like the better ideas about how this is operating when it comes to learning centers. So let's look at this.
So the impact of differentiation, the students feel successful. They feel supported. They know if something is difficult for them, there's something that's a little more in line with their strengths coming up soon. So it really makes education fun and approachable. I really think it's the most effective way that I have seen to teach.
The vision and the mission of Highlander is to use innovative practice as a social catalyst. We want our kids to be able to do anything any other kid from Providence could do.
We use differentiation all across the curriculum here at Highlander, and especially in the first grade. Although the content is the same, having the stations really allows me to tailor my lessons to each individual group of learners. So how the differentiation looks in my classroom, we start off with a whole group lesson. So let's get our reading glasses on. Let's get the letter part of our brains activated. This section of our curriculum, we have been looking at nonfiction texts. When we're looking at our book today, we're going to be thinking about where we can get information. And then in the phonics realm, we focused on contractions. We're taking two words, and what are we sticking them together with? Apostrophe, yes, Karen. And then we break off into our small groups. So our yellow group is still learning how to do a lot of our literacy things. The green group is doing pretty well, but has a few things to work on still. And our blue group is hitting all the first grade standards and needs to be stretched.
Okay, how was the video? I think it shows like clear idea that how you can incorporate this differentiated instruction with learning centers, right? I totally understand that if some of you are new to this differentiated instruction, you might feel overwhelmed. So you don't need to worry about everything at once. You can start from grouping your students and also activities within those class time. So if you are just focusing on just reading comprehension exercise, then you can add some of the moving your students' body kind of exercise, music exercise, or anything else to meet your students' multiple intelligence. That would be a really nice start. I think this is pretty much it for today with me. And it was really nice to talk about differentiated instruction through this, like the one seminar with me. I hope you have a clear understanding of what differentiated instruction is, and also your motivation that you could apply this in your classroom. Thank you a lot, and enjoy the rest of Next Bye.